Welcome
Thank you.
to Aha.
Aha.
Uh-huh.
And I think we can see us this way.
Oh, cool.
No, not quite. Let's see. How about here? No.
Technology.
Let's see if we can. Hello! Here we are.
Oh, fantastic.
Here we are.
All right.
Good evening, everyone.
You look like a princess.
Wow.
Your,
Oh, I forgot my tiara. Too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, you did forget your tiara.
So we are here to celebrate our dear friend, Anthony Donahoe. Let's see if I'm learning how to do this. Maybe. No, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be happy that we're here. And Phyllis, Martin, and I all loved Anthony. I can feel his presence a bit just talking about him. Hi, Tony. And who would like to go first and tell us how they met Anthony?
Well, I met Anthony at UMass Boston probably in the early 1980s. And he was coming out of an English class that was teaching Gravity's Rainbow and the Universal Baseball Association by Thomas Pynchon. And that's where I met him first.
And let me just mention, I was telling our guest before, I'm Michael Koran. This is Phyllis Mercillion. Mercillion. Wow, someone really loves you to get that right. Phyllis Mercillion and Martin Hanley.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're all from different generations, and we all love Anthony. We've got him covered. And there's an old Jewish tradition, maybe belief, of experience. If you remember well someone who has died, our memories are like prayer energy and it helps them rise toward the heavens.
Like incense.
Beautiful.
Like incense, yes.
Very beautiful.
We're going to get a lot of analogies from Phyllis Mercillion. Did I get it right?
Mercillion.
Oh, Mercillion.
You're getting closer.
Think of surly.
Now that's Armenian, no?
Yes, I'm a half-breed. My mother's family was English descent, Plymouth Rock.
Wow.
And my father was an immigrant, so I see both sides.
Wow.
He arrived at the age of 2 through Ellis Island.
Wow.
He was born in what was then Constantinople in
Interesting,
Turkey.
huh?
And because he was Armenian, his whole flock had to leave in a great hurry and was so thrilled to get here. And I admired my grandfather because he had his own business there, was reasonably comfortable. Finally, when I got to be about 30, I got to the roots idea, and I asked my grandmother's sister, my great aunt, who was then in her 90s. And she remembered, because she was a girl of 15 when she made the trip with the family. Mm-hmm. And she told me that my grandfather had a maid, a cook, and a gardener. But when they got here, he used every bit of money that he had. So he came here with nothing because he bought out literally as many of the family and people as it was possible.
Wow.
So I'm very proud of him for that.
Sure.
Wow.
What was his name?
Asador
Asador.
Mercillion. I guess the English would be Isidore.
Wow.
But
Wonderful.
anyway, and my grandmother's name while we're at it was Monig, which is Mary in English.
Very good.
So we're going to help raise tone, whether you like it or not. We are going to lift you
Lift
even
you up.
higher. Up you go.
The
There he
incense
goes.
of prayer and wonderful thoughts.
Yes, with these memories of you.
Oh, he's here.
And they'll be honest. I know you wouldn't want, we're not going to make a pretty, the last thing you'd want is a pretty picture. Okay, Martin, so you
Yes.
met Anthony,
At UMass Boston years ago.
yes, and what did it feel like during that
Well,
first meeting?
It was interesting. I mean, it was so long ago, but we made a connection, and
How did you do that?
well, we were in the same class. It was as I said, it was a Thomas Pynchon class by a professor called Mrs. Kroll, and she liked us actually. She thought we were kind of interesting because, you know, Anthony was inquisitive about writing, and he was an interesting writer, Thomas Pynchon, and then I got to get to know who he was. And we had one connection, which was he did have an Irish accent that I noticed. And he came out to America, I guess, when he was a teenager, I believe. And my parents are Irish, but I grew up in New York City. And he resided here. So, and the thing was, he was interested in the aspect of Irish culture, like at that time, you know, like Beckett and John Millington Synge, and so he. I elected to do a course, like a theater course, with a guy called Tim McDonough.
So now you're fine.
Tim McDonough, who had a TheaterWorks program, which was actually quite excellent, him and Vinnie Murphy and others, and that was being put on at the Boston Theater Company at UMass Boston campus. And so Anthony elected to do an acting class, and he did Marat Sade, and he was quite good for somebody who was not trained traditionally as people who have direction that go to Juilliard or the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. If you know, but he was an innate sort of performer, and so I everybody when they're young wants to be a movie star.
Yes.
Right, you know, or a baseball player, or you know, I mean, you dream of these things because you know we grow up in America and we have a fabulous pop culture machine. But you know, we dabbled in that and did it at a very bare, like a studio, couple of, you know, everything was on a thin budget, and that's how I made a connection with him, and so we would go see some plays here and there, and you know, he would do things in the Open Door Theater, which was a theater in Jamaica Plain. I would go see that, and when you're young like that, and you're trying to meet people and connect, I made a connection with him, and it was the first class was a Thomas Pynchon class, and part of the reason he kind of came up to me, he initiated the conversation, was because I had these Harry the Greek navy pants on, you know, that you snap. Comes off as a square with buttons from the front of your lower part of the body. And he was in the Navy for 4 years, and he went to Russia as a young Navy recruit. So, and he had always a love of the sea. So he was interested. He wasn't into, you know, he actually, his father owned a bar in Hyde Park, and he would put plays in that bar, like The Shadow of the Glen, and you know, John Cate, who's the poet that did that? Escapes my mind. The Shadow of the Glen, Casey, I believe. Sean Casey, was it? God, I'm losing my mind here, but yeah, but he did a lot of the Sean O'Casey, I believe it was. He did some plays, just little plays in the pub, and people would kind of like come from the theater class while his father and mother tended the bar, and he put on some really good plays, and The Hiker was another one, and so that's how I got to know him.
And stayed friends.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, you know, the thing about him, he initiated conversations, he initiated phone calls, I mean, so he was good at keeping in touch with people, which is an art form. I mean, that's what's great about Phyllis, but I sometimes I think that goes with being the gentler sex, if I may say that, this day and age. Yeah, being a female.
So he kept the friendship going for 40 years
Yeah, pretty
almost.
much that. And we went to, different places, traveled to different states. And we went to Ireland on a trip actually quite recently. We went to the 100-year anniversary of something known as the Easter Rising.
1916.
1916.
Mm.
So in 2016, and he brought a fellow poet who was in I think he might have been about 80 at the time. His name was Ron Goba.
Yes, his writing teachers.
Right. And he used to hold court at Doyle's Cafe in Jamaica Plain.
Mm-hmm.
And he was quite a good poet. And so we went to Ireland, and we traveled to the west and saw some of his relatives. Went to Sligo, which I believe is where that's Yeats' country. I think he is buried in Sligo. And we went to Galway, which is a bustling city, and just it was nice being there in April when it was kind of cold and damp, and you could go on the Strand in the west of Ireland. So we hung out there, and we had some whiskeys at the time, and we traveled around, and Ron Goba would recite poems, and Anthony kept the conversation going. It would be like us going down to New York in a train, and before we knew it, we're there. From the conversation, time escaped us. So, I mean, so it's nice when you can connect with people and you have those friends. And of course, as you get older, sometimes they're taking that journey across the River Jordan, as Anthony has done. So, just got to keep them in our hearts because we're only passing through.
Wow.
I think we come back again, but who knows? Sometimes if you kind of let your mind go free and you think of something, and something blows up on a tree, and you see the it's like you pass a graveyard and you see Donahoe, and then all of a sudden a construction car goes by and you see Anthony's construction, and you go, isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So things happen. The mystery is always around us if we pay attention, but there's so much stuff coming in, that you have to go to the country and be silent, and on a clear night just lay out and see the stars and get away from the light pollution and just have a media fast, and then you can kind of listen to your own thoughts, and maybe you could write a decent poem. So that's how I met him, and he was a pretty good poet too. Good actor,
Oh,
good
yes.
poet.
Oh, yes.
Good poet, good actor.
Good friend.
Good friend.
Funniest man I've ever met.
Yeah. He's funny too, and he had a lot of love. And he wasn't somebody that, he needed to make the moment interesting. So if you went somewhere with him, he always would want to find, who are you? And if somebody was in a cafe, and he'd go, hi, how are you? And would you like to come join us? So he was always bringing people in, and
Yes.
and that's what people need. There's a lot of people talk about diseases. We go through real diseases. Cancer, heart disease, all the things that we need to cure. But one of the biggest diseases and silent killers is loneliness, and there's a lot of lonely people out there. And Anthony broke through that veil.
And he was lonely, I think.
Well, all people who are outgoing and all people who are great actors, I think.
Oh.
I think a lot of them, you'd be surprised that, it's like people have tragedy in their life and they become very successful, and you find out that some people succumb and some people just thrive because they need to reach out and feel their love coming to them through their art. And many people are just plain gifted. So
What a life
that's the magic.
What a life he lived, including with you two.
I felt Anthony was a wonderful conversationalist. The art of conversation is almost dead.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Anthony would discuss any subject very thoughtfully. And he would manage to steer conversation. He was an excellent moderator, very creative. And I think that part of his creativity, it took many forms. He wrote poetry, and I write poetry, so we often would critique each other and or make suggestions. And I went with his aunt and several of his relatives to see a one-act play. It was an evening of one-act plays in which he not only had written the play, but he acted in it.
Oh, I saw that. I was there too.
Were you?
Yeah, I was in on Commonwealth Avenue.
Oh yeah.
It was the South End, as I recall.
Oh, maybe he did it in many places.
He probably did.
Yes.
Yeah. But he was so good at that. And then I know he was drama coach at Brookline High School for a while.
I did not know
that's
that.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he showed me, when he told me about Anthony, because I never knew that part of his life. And a few years ago, he let me read the story that he sold in the New York Times, practically the whole page, about his son and his relationship and how he met him. And
This is a sperm donor son.
that's right.
Who was on our show last week and talking about.
Yes.
Alex. Yes.
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 Alex. He's a great guy.
And I think it's wonderful that he bonded with him, and then afterwards with the daughter.
Kate.
Yes.
He
He
Also
worked,
sperm donor.
worked
Lovely
hard.
girl.
He worked hard for that.
Yes, he
He
did.
really did come through more than fathers at that age usually do.
I admired him for that. He took his son, I believe, to Iceland for a week, and that was a good opportunity.
Oh, my
for them
aunt to Ireland too, I think.
Yeah, that
That's
must have
right.
been fun. Iceland there.
And so I think probably we were also interested in each other's travels. I lived in Israel for 5 years, and I sang in a choral group which did concerts all over the world, including Russia, and I had been in Leningrad, and he had now St. Petersburg again, and he was also there when it was Leningrad, and so we had it's a very interesting time comparing what we thought of different places that both of us had been in Europe. I'm not sure whether he went to Asia or not, but we had a lot of common interest in discussing issues of the day, and he was never at a loss. But what was remarkable for him for me was his kindness. He was very, very kind. We had a homeless man in West Roxbury that Anthony kind of took under his wing and introduced him to people, because most people feel it's an invisible man. And he wanted to show that he's a human being like the rest of us, and that he was a very solitary figure. And I think that comes into the loneliness that Martin was talking about. I do think most people, I think there's a difference between solitude. I think all of us require solitude at times. I think Anthony did. And I know I do. But then there are times that you want companionship, human companionship. And Anthony wanted to get close to people, but I think not too close. He wanted to maintain a little distance.
What do you think, Martin?
Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, he was like most people who need their space. I guess that's the term you use. Yeah, but he was always like I would describe Anthony as an outgoing person, upbeat, outgoing, and perhaps because of some of his curiosity in theater, writing poetry, his social work, because he was a therapist, the book he was writing about his children, probably overwhelmed him, so sometimes he needed his solitude. So it was perfect for him to have his own space. But when he stepped out the door, Shazam.
Wow.
You know, he could, you know, he's the type of guy he could deal with anything that came down the pike that was heavy, and he knew how to diffuse somebody if they were very hostile. Like once I saw a person that was obviously not doing too well on in a city street, and you know, he just kind of like wasn't intimidated and brought the person down, and the person had some issues, and he talked to them. And in this particular case, the guy was basically very big hug and all the rest of it. So he had that ability to conflict resolution. He was interested in that conflict resolution and how people in relationships sometimes they hit an impasse and maybe they never talk to each other. Or there's a break or a form of begrudgery can occur out of that, and really what it is a lack of communication. So he worked on that, and he helped people work on that. And a lot of the times people had troubles with their wife, their kid, their financial situations, and he would work through that, and he learned about that. And then that was one aspect of him, besides his, you know, writing poems and everything else. So, you know, it's like a lot of people of that type, artistic person. He had an artistic temperament. So artistic people are wonderful people, and they can also be like, did I do something wrong? Nope, I'll get to you in my space. Okay, I'm putting you over here in the Isle of Alba. Where was Napoleon? Where did he go?
Yes.
Alba. So I'll row that boat out there at some point. But right now, I got to go over here and deal with this situation. Okay, peace be upon you. So, and what happens is, you know, nature comes by and goes, "We need you with the angels."
Wow, Martin.
And then you go up, and then you're like, "Geez, I wanted to meet him one more time."
Well, maybe we can feel. I'm getting to know him better thanks to both of you.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much in Anthony, so many things. I think that's what made him, I think, probably a very good therapist, because he had a great deal of empathy. He had that wonderful ability of being able to put himself in the other person's shoes and look at it from his perspective. And if things got too heavy, he had a wicked sense of humor.
Yes.
And so he could say something really funny that would break the thing. And on the other hand, he could be very serious. I remember one time when he told me that he had cancer, several years ago. And he just simply said, blurted out, really, "I have cancer," because he had been to the doctor. And immediately afterward, he said, "I don't want to talk about it."
Well,
And so I said, "All right, Anthony, you don't have to." And I never mentioned the word to him again. I thought, if he wants to talk about it, he'll bring it out himself. And if he doesn't, that's his way of handling it. And I think that he didn't, I am sure that he had pain, but he never talked about it. I think he did a lot of meditating. That was one way of controlling it, or he somehow managed to transcend it for most of the time. And he would go away. I think he found nature very healing. I do too. And he would go away to the wilderness, and perhaps with a group, and they would split for a week, each with his own tent and his own food or whatever, and then they would meet again. So I think that actually he went through the traditional chemotherapy, and then I think he didn't like what it was doing to his body, and he decided to go to alternative medicine, and he I think was very successful. Matter of fact, I think he probably did as well. But I think one of the last conversations I had with him, I was driving out of my driveway, just getting out of the driveway, and he was coming up the street. He walked out into the street and stopped me, and with a smile on his face, he said, little of the old Blarney, you know, he said, "Ma, you look pretty today. You look so pretty. What makes you so pretty?" So I looked at him and I said, "Oh, maybe a man. Maybe a man who flatters her."
Wow.
So he grinned. But he had the way of being able to switch from one thing to another instantaneously. This is the last thing I can think of at the moment, but he came over one day to discuss something with me. It might have been something about the neighborhood. But anyway, I was having trouble with a foot. And he immediately took over, almost like a doctor, and he said, "Let me give you a foot massage."
Wow.
And so we sat on the sofa, and he took my foot, and when he got through, I had a new foot.
Wow.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, what a friend to have.
Yes, right.
Foot massage.
But he was willing to try almost anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you were great friends.
Yeah. Well, I think
You were neighbors. You lived next door to each other.
he was very good to his aunt too.
Yeah.
As I really met him through her, but she never had any children. But she would have been a wonderful mother. She loved
Oh,
children.
yeah. Auntie May was. Pretty
Auntie
amazing.
May was auntie to everybody.
She was like a. Now, how old was Auntie May?
In her 90s.
She was. I know that he tried very hard to give her a 95th birthday party,
Yeah.
and she was just as stubborn as he was. No, there's not going to be any party.
Oh my.
She didn't want
95.
one.
That's a mighty age.
But he was very good to her.
That's a great age.
Yeah.
And how old are you now, Phyllis?
Gonna make me say it again, huh?
No.
95.
Wow.
95.
What's the secret of your success?
What is the secret of your success? Please.
Kickapoo Joy Juice.
Peekaboo Joy Juice.
You drink that? No.
Be happy. Don't worry.
No, I think part of it is being interested in other people. And a long time ago, I feel that what ages you more than anything else is holding grudges and not forgiving people. So I
That's
discovered
a
a
good-
long time ago,
That's true.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
forgive
Very
everybody
true.
everything.
Wow.
That's true.
And it's amazing.
Now, one question,
It lightens you.
I had what was called, well, I first wanted to say about Anthony, hopefully I can remember both. Should have brought a pad. I almost learned never to hold back any words at all talking to him,
Yes.
which you usually do with people.
Yes.
I would only say nice words to you, Martin. I don't know what you
You
would.
don't know me yet.
Yeah.
And Anthony-
Oh, you're a lovely man. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, Martin. He's just an old good fellow. But with Anthony, I had to say everything that came to mind.
Oh, wow.
Because if I didn't, I felt I had not respected our friendship.
Wow, that's it. Wow.
So I was so surprised our last meeting when we planned a television show like this one. And we sat down and made an outline because the previous time he wandered way.
Right.
It wasn't that. And we agreed to do the outline. And we sat down right here with another friend, a friend of Alex,
Right.
another sperm donor child.
Right.
And we were doing the show, and he asked John a question. And I said, Anthony, let's stick to the outline. And he said, if you make me do that, I'm leaving. I said, Anthony, we've got to. And he got up and left.
Wow.
And that was the last time I've ever seen him.
Wow.
So something happened. It has happened with other friends, too.
Right.
So something happened in his sickness. I know this feeling myself, where everything can irritate you.
Yeah.
Just the tiniest things.
Yeah, no, as you get older, things can get on your nerves. But if you're sick, surely you don't suffer. Well, not that we're fools, but you don't suffer fools gladly. But you don't. So your time is limited. But he's kind of like a jazz musician. It's like, no, I'm going here. I'm going here. What? What? You want to get this song done in 3 minutes? No, I'm going to do a little John Coltrane here, and I'm leaving now because I'm in John Coltrane territory.
If I would have done it again, I didn't know this yet. I would have said, Anthony, would you consider following our line?
But it's okay, because guess what? You are forgiven, Brother Michael.
Oh, that was my next question about forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Well, if we knew the antidote to that, sure, the world would be a wonderful place, wouldn't it?
I did, which worked for me, but I paid. Spiritual bypass forgiveness.
Oh, I like that.
And spiritual bypass forgiveness is you hear these wonderful words that Phyllis said.
Yes.
Okay, you really will be much more alive and vital if you don't hold. So I forgave my mother, who was a challenge, as Anthony's mother was a challenge. Right. And both parents. His father used to kick him in the head.
Wow. Well, you know, Oscar Wilde says you never forgive your parents.
Well, I tried to forgive my mother.
Right.
My mother was very difficult. She would hit me, even when I was around 14, 15 even, hit me, and I'd, don't cry. Boys, don't cry. Stop crying. You make me feel like I'm a lousy mother. Whack! Really, at any time. It made it challenging to begin to have relationships with women, which I didn't until I was 30. So
right, but you have one asset. You're a handsome devil.
Thank God.
Thank God for that.
So I
think of it this way: poor old Ludwig Beethoven. He sure got the bejesus whacked out of him, but
his father, I would have a hard time forgiving his father.
So I became a Christian, obviously, for obvious reasons, because I needed all the help I could get and the forgiveness I could get for what was in me. And I decided to forgive my mother.
Right.
But I had a reason I'm calling it forgiveness bypass, and you can tell me if I don't think this is true for you. I had much more hate in me,
right,
and pain in me than I knew. And it just came like vomit, really, spewing night out. So I wondered if but you, I don't think, suffer from forgiveness bypass, where you forgive, but you still have many hateful feelings that haven't been dealt with.
Well, as my mother said, they say forgive and forget, and she said, I forgive, but it's very hard to forget.
Oh,
that's part of
and maybe
what
you
you're
shouldn't,
saying.
and maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah. It's.
I was angry at Anthony, because this is maybe part of the discussion, for not sharing with me what was going on medically. I mean, there's a certain, it's called menitis. It's a illness diagnosed in the American Psychological Society. It's called menitis. Menitis is men who think they could go it alone entirely. They don't think they need other people, and he, I think, was suffering from menitis as far as his family or his close friends not having a discussion about what to do and just deciding all by his lonesome.
You know, I think I mentioned this on the way, but it stuck in my mind after I listened to your program where you discussed a few of Anthony's poems, and one of them was A Fallen Angel. And in that poem, there's a line, you can probably remember it, refresh me better, but it was something about, in a way, it was a tug of war about going to bed for unnecessary that he was being pulled to his bed because of unnecessary sleep. In other words, his body was tired or whatever, and
or he was depressed and didn't need the sleep.
that's right. But I thought in my mind it reminded me of Keats' poem, which starts, when I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. And I thought, in his mind, I think subconsciously at least, he must have been thinking that his own death, because of this disease, was approaching, and he had all these ideas and things he wanted to write and do.
Yes.
And he felt that, like Keats, who died in his 20s, I believe.
26.
Yes.
26, mercy.
That may have been part of it.
That's what Keats, we have time? Yeah, we have lots of time. What Keats has written on his tombstone.
What?
His tombstone in Italy, because he went to Italy.
That's right. That's
for
where he
health
wrote
reasons.
this. Yeah.
Here lies a failed poet.
Wow. Interesting.
Tony, I was Tony's writing teacher, among other things.
Ah.
I met Tony at a writing retreat. And we laughed so much together that my woman friend at the time, and still my dear friend Barbara Michaels, said, you have to make friends with that man.
Oh, that's great.
And so most of my friends in life, as I hope we will continue to become friends, are, you don't decide. I didn't say, okay, I'm going to be friends with Phyllis. It's just, it grows from, connected to
Here, Barbara.
So I consciously made friends with Anthony, which was challenging for me at the time. He was so funny, I tried to keep up with him. But it I wasn't myself. I was just trying to be, so I would be acceptable. It took me a long time to learn what I told you. I should just speak whatever comes into my mind when I'm with Tony. We would really say mean things to one another.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh.
Say this. No, I'm a masochist. Really. But it was how can I say, it was real. It wasn't
Right.
like this conversation.
It sounds like a good play. Good.
It was very comforting. I had never done that with anyone in my life. So it was such a surprise on television when I said that, hey, we got to stick to the outline, which was what naturally came to me.
Right.
For him it seemed like a violation of our unspoken agreement. We could say anything to each other.
Yeah.
But he was that way. Of all things today, a friend of mine told me that his last time with Anthony was also an argument.
Yeah.
I think when you get sick, that beautiful quality of him
Right.
to really, well, not really. This is a funny segue, but the women friends I know, because we were part of a Finnegan's Wake group for 20 years.
He told me
Wow.
about that. I almost came to one. He invited me.
We went to Ireland together for 8 days.
Awesome. How was that?
Fantastic.
Oh, great. Where'd you guys go?
We went to his house, among other things.
Awesome.
But we were in Dublin mostly for the 100th anniversary of Paul de Bloom's
1916.
June 16th.
Awesome. I got you off track. Sorry.
No, I had said what I had said though, but so just that he encouraged me to finally be able to speak my mind
Right.
unreservedly
Right.
to someone.
Well, he helped.
Oh, I was going to say with women. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
With women, the women I knew, him. Several said they were bothered by him. They loved, I mean, Tony
Right.
was lovable
Right.
and funny, but they couldn't find him.
Right. Right.
The humor was, the brilliant humor
Right.
was a shield. I can identify
Oh, sure.
deeply,
Wit is a shield.
deeply. And even our humor together wasn't about, I wouldn't say, it wouldn't even occur to me, hey, Tony, what about this illness?
I think Oscar Wilde had a quote. I probably don't have it correct, but it's, if you tell somebody the truth, they'll kill you. But if you make them laugh, they'll get it.
Wow! I'd like to get the exact one. Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of close to that. So I think if it's like what makes a good politician, you have to have a form of wit about you. You have to have a sense of humor. You have to gauge your audience and know what you can say. And I'm sure that there's a lot of lack of humor in the world today, and wit, precisely. And Anthony had, he had that quality, the best quality of
It comes
that
from
can distill.
pain.
It comes from pain, and
Pain
it comes-
helps humor.
And the Irish had their fair share of it. So
Yes,
they
the
got-
Irish and Jews.
Yeah,
Yes,
of course. If it wasn't for the Irish and Jews,
Was that-
true. There's
And the
a book-
blacks.
There's a book called that. George M. Cohen. His real name was Keoh, I believe Keohane, and he changed it to Cohen because Tin Pan Alley at the time they were switching off back and forth at the turn of the last century. So that's just musicality. I'm trying to connect what I just said was that you being Armenian. I mean, there's so many people have been were on the wrong end of the deal and the wrong end of the stick. That in the particular aspect of being Irish, you had to hide your true thoughts and live on the ground. The hedge schools and the secret societies and humor. That's why Oscar Wilde was such a great. He was. Definitely.
and he was done in himself. He did
was
himself.
done in, yeah.
He did himself in.
Yeah, he wound up. There's a great poem when he was in prison.
The Ballad
Ballad
of
of Reading.
yes,
It's
jail.
a fantastic poem, and
Some kill. We all kill the ones we love.
Right.
Some do it
coward.
with a. Say it again.
The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword.
Oh, I didn't know it was,
Yeah,
that
he
was the
was
ending.
fantastic.
I have one line that I always bring up when we talk about this kind of thing. It's in music. It's George Gershwin. I've forgotten what musical it's from, but it's Wintergreen for President. La 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 la. He's the man the people choose. Loves the Irish and the Jews.
Wow.
Oh, George Gershwin was something else. Him and his brother.
Yeah,
What
Ira.
Yeah,
Ira.
incredible.
talent.
Oh, Aaron Copland, Gershwin.
As I said at the
Where would we be without the Jews? Really? They're fantastic.
or the Irish. There's a famous book called The Irish Saved Civilization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's true. In the Dark Ages, I believe it was the monks in the Middle Ages
Yep.
copying the manuscripts.
Yep.
They did not only religious texts, but all the classics of Greek and Rome.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Hard work.
Hard work.
Right, copying the Iliad. Help.
Right. Well, there's something to be said about candlelight and being in a ecclesiastical setting. If you don't have any, or monk in granite lit by candles, and you can write away.
You don't have distractions.
And you have the education to learn that. It's important. And we got too many. There's a lot of nonsense out there. A lot of people aren't versed in good poetry. Even just being a common person and going to public schools years ago. When I talked to some of the older people, that they can tell a poem and wrote off the top of their head, and it's a good skill. Now you know some poetry off the top of your head, don't you, Phyllis?
Yeah, some.
But, well, give us a little poem here, because Anthony was a poet, and so was Michael, and Phyllis actually always wins the senior poetry thing at the local library where she always comes in either first or second.
Wow.
I have the name of being the resident poet of the library there.
Oh my, that's beautiful.
All right, let's see. I'll think of a couple of short ones. Let's see, 4 lines. I'll be able to get that in. Let's see. I like this one. No, okay, wait a minute. Let me think. Let's see. All right, this is not the one I was thinking of, but I can think of it fast. So it's a doubting in the heart can be sharp as a pointed lance.
Oh, that's pretty good.
No, wait a minute. I've got to get the rhyme.
A doubting in the heart can be.
Heart can be sharp as a pointed lance, and casting in an unknown sea, we sieve the notes, we sieve the nets of chance.
Wow.
How's that?
You've done well with all the chants.
But the fourth one, I like this one much better if I can only think of it. Let's see. And this won the prize once, and when I made the acceptance speech, whatever, I said, I hope I didn't win this prize because of the brevity of this piece. The clouds. It's about a sea. The mists of consciousness.
Maybe next television show, Phyllis.
We'll let it go. Right. Okay.
So it seems to me, talking about Tony now. Hi, Tony. I'm sure you're listening. It seems to me, talking about Tony, that with the hurdles in his body and soul, which were considerate, although I'm not quite sure all the siblings grew up in that very brutal home, growing up on the farm behind the tavern in Ireland. Poor. But everyone else got married and had children, I think. Is that true?
Well, I mean, my experience, but I might be the... from what I knew of Anthony, their family was very loving to each other, and Philomena and Paul, his dad, obviously his father was like my father. He had to make $1 and watch the mice at the crossroads, as they say. So you had.
What does that mean? Watch the mice at the crossroads?
Well, because you look one way, somebody's taking the money off the bar. You gotta take care of business, and they struggled and they came up the hard way, and they were always very loving and fun, and I always got free food when I went by the Cabinet Cafe, so they were very loving to me and kind, and they were nice. I wasn't too party to any personal stuff that he may have gone through, but all in all, they loved each other very much and had a pretty good family.
Oh, I didn't get that. You're kind memory.
Yeah, no, I kind of felt that they did I think that, well, it's kind of weird. That's sort of like, I've known, so like Moonstruck, the movie, when I grew up in Queens, New York, I knew some people who were very emotional, and, when, like back in the day before everybody broke up, I would see Tony Calabrese and his sister Donna Calabrese, who had a crush on, and one time the father was very angry at the wife, and they were throwing and shouting. It was like a firestorm, and then I'd see them the next weekend down in St. Michael's Cemetery having a picnic, and they were all lovey-dovey, and they they did good by the kids, and so there was space to kind of I don't know what went behind closed doors, but their kids turned out they turned out well. So that's sort of the report card of success. You might keep the wounds within you, but as long as they weren't laying on the streets and they weren't kind of destitute like that homeless person Anthony took in, one could say that, raising a family is hard, and the Donahoes did a great job. And the proof's in Anthony.
I didn't feel he was loved or felt love from either parent.
Really? Yeah.
I remember it was an Easter Sunday meal,
Right.
and the family was sitting in the living room in the place where he's living now, and nobody was saying a word. Total silence, as if they didn't. These were people,
I gotta remember that if I ever want to write something, because that's interesting. Because I'll tell you. Go on, tell the story.
and these are people who've known each other. Not even nice weather we're having.
Were you the guest that came into the situation?
I was
Anthony?
watching from the table.
Well, it's funny. One time,
Let me quite finish.
Okay, sorry. Go on.
So Tony walks in, hears and sees the silence,
Right.
and says in typical Tony fashion, "Okay, everybody, what's the most painful experience you've ever had?" And go, "Artist, I am not making this up."
That's funny.
Let me get this in quickly to redeem myself. I finally put it through. This is my four-line poem, and this was the winner this time. And I read this to Anthony. Let's see. It's called Slumber. Every year they give you a different topic. You have to write on that topic. So it was sleep, so I called it Slumber or sinking into sleep. The crumbling cliffs of consciousness disintegrate. The deep and dimming mists of muted birds become gray doves of sleep.
Oh,
Wow.
say it again, slowly.
Isn't that funny? The man who was conducting the poem made me do it the second time.
Yes, and with a lot and with the title, it's slow.
Slumber or sinking into sleep. The crumbling cliffs of consciousness disintegrate. The deep and dimming mists of muted birds become gray doves of sleep.
Wow, that's very beautiful.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Hey, I have a poem here,
Good.
but I didn't write it.
Who did?
William Blake wrote it.
Oh yeah, tiger, tiger, burning bright.
Yeah. The Chimney Sweeper. When my mother died, I was very young. By William Blake. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry. Weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved. So I said, hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight, that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. Then naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom, if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all they do their duty, they need not fear harm.
Jeez.
So your lot in life, sometimes you come out and you have a certain lot in life, and William Blake, kind of, they had a dream, and then the dream was very, very good. You can have a copy of that if you want.
Oh, sad, very sad.
Yes, very
And
nice.
so why this poem
Oh, I just,
in our memory of Anthony?
because Anthony loved poetry, and I thought it'd be nice to read a poem, and because I don't write poetry myself, I just grabbed a few poems and
And
That
this
was a
one,
very nice one. I like
There's a
Wittenberg.
Nathaniel Hawthorne poem if one of you guys want to read
no,
it.
I think we're almost out of time.
Oh, we out of time? Okay.
We have only
Right in front of you.
Oh, I don't.
we have 2.5
minutes?
minutes.
Okay.
So
How shall we conclude?
well, a prayer and final words. You can come on closer if you can.
Oh,
Martin.
okay.
A prayer and final words to Tony,
Yes.
if we whatever, or move to Martin or Phyllis, if there's a prayer you have or words you want to say.
Well, my prayer for Anthony and his family and his son Alex and Kate is look down upon them, his brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, and guide them, and as angels that live above us, give us guidance that we can be kept from harm, and that we have peace with God or the powers in the spirit world to look after us. And thank you for showing us your generosity and your spirit, Anthony, and look over us and say hi to all the people that have gone before us, and tell them that we love them, and soon we'll join them, but not too soon, hopefully. Amen.
Hey, woman. Phyllis.
Oh, woman.
Anthony, God bless you, and may you leave some of your creativity with us. Help us to be as kind as you were to many people.
Wow.
And you had a lively nature, but you always found time to be gentle with people who were depressed or in need. And we also hope to join you someday.
Not too soon.
Oh, wow.
As I
What
said
to look?
once.
No, you still have 25 seconds.
All right, God bless you.
We have to
Anthony.
catch up to his creative.
Keep us.
Oh,
Keep
wow.
us in your prayers, and we keep you in
Oh,
ours.
that's so comforting. I look forward, Tone,
Tone.
to giving you a hard time again.
Wait, we gotta
meet again.
Let's join hands, everyone.
Yes.
To you, Tone.